संतभास्करं विभुं सुधाकरं कृपाकरं सुधानन्दात्मरञ्जनं सुधाकरं कृपाकरं सुधानन्दात्मरञ्जनं गणेश्वरं गजेश्वरं सुरेश्वरं महेश्वरं गणेश्वरं गजेश्वरं सुरेश्वरं महेश्वरं नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करं नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करम् रंगा हरे विठला रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला नरहर रंगा हरे विठला नरहर रंगा हरे विठला मुरहर रंगा हरे विठला मुरहर रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला रंगा हरे विठला नरहर रंगा हरे विठला मुरहर रंगा हरे विठला मुरहर रंगा विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शांति शांति शांति। Together we will chant Bhaj Govindam verses 10 to 20. भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते सम्प्राप्ते सन्निहिते काले नहि नहि रक्षति डुक्रुन्करणे वयसि गते कः कामविकारः शुष्के नीरे कः कासारः क्षीणे वित्ते कः परिवारो ज्ञाते तत्त्वे कः संसारः मा कुरु धन जन यौवन गर्वं हरति निमेषात् कालः सर्वम् मायामयमिदमखिलं भूत्वा ब्रह्मपदं त्वं प्रविश विदित्वा दिनयामिन्यौ सायं प्रातः शिशिरवसन्तौ पुनरायातः कालः क्रीडति गच्छत्यायुः तदपि न मुञ्चत्याशावायुः काते कान्ता धनगतचिन्ता वातुल किं तव नास्ति नियन्ता त्रिजगति सज्जनसङ्गतिरेका भवति भवार्णवतरणे नौका जटिलो मुण्डीलुञ्चितकेशः काषायाम्बर बहुकृत वेषः पश्यन्नपि च न पश्यति मूढो रुदरनिमित्तं बहुकृतवेषः अङ्गं गलितं फलितं मुण्डं दशनविहीनं जातं तुण्डम् वृद्धो याति गृहीत्वा दण्डं तदपि न मुञ्चत्याशापिण्डम् अग्रे वह्निः पृष्ठे भानुः रात्रौ चुबुकसमर्पितजानुः करतलभिक्षस्तरुतलवासः तदपि न मुञ्चत्याशापाशः कुरुते गङ्गा सागरगमनं व्रतपरिपालनमथवा दानम् ज्ञानविहीन सर्वमतेन मुक्तिं न भजति जन्मशतेन सुरमन्दिरतरुमूलनिवासः शय्याभूतलमजिनं वासः सर्वपरिग्रहभोगत्यागः कस्य सुखं न करोति विरागः योगरतो वा भोगरतो वा संगरतो वा संगविहीनः यस्य ब्रह्मणि रमते चित्तं नन्दति नन्दति नन्दत्येव भगवद्गीता किञ्चिदधीता गङ्गा जललवकणिका पीता सकृदपि येन मुरारिसमर्च क्रियते तस्य यमेन न चर्चा भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते सम्प्राप्ते सन्निहिते काले नहि नहि रक्षति Krunkarane. So, the previous class we have been studying in the chapter 8 topic Consummation of life. So, the culmination of human life, chapter 8, in that we are trying to understand what is the consummation. Consummation of life means what is the finality of human life. So, the supreme self, a human being is made up of spirit and matter. Spirit is the Atman and matter is the material equipments of the body, mind and intellect. So the spirit and matter put together is you and me. So the spirit is also called the Atman, the same in every human being. It is the power, electricity in everybody. In the layman's terms, it is the God principle. The God is the very essence of your core of your being. That self is one in all living beings. The self is one. The self is same and one in every living being, all living beings. So there is no difference in yourself and myself. Supreme self has no difference. We are all different because of the matter layers, material equipments of the body, mind, intellect, shariram, manasu and buddhi. These three equipments difference. There is no difference between, therefore, there is no difference between the sage or a sinner. As far as the God is concerned, the God within you is the same. So whether he is a saint or a sinner, that there is no difference in the self, the spirit, the Atman is concerned. The body, mind, intellect, the sage and saint different only because of the matter layers, material equipments. The self in the saint is the self in the sinner. A terrorist constantly killing people. The same Atman, same God functions. And the saint, the sage, the rishi, Mahatma, who is serving the people, helping the people. Same Atman. Atman has no difference in the saint. Atman has no difference in the sinner. Yet these personalities are different. Varieties of personalities. The personalities are completely opposite nature. One is sacrificial, another is core selfish. So variety of individualities, personalities, because of the material equipments. In fact, the humanity, entire human beings comprises a variety of countless personalities. So we are all a heterogeneous variety of personalities connected by homogeneous consciousness principle. The Atman connected by all these variety of living beings, homogeneous principle connected by the heterogeneous variety. So though there is no equality as far as the two persons are concerned, they are different, but the Atman is the same. So there are no two persons are same. Persons are not same. The heterogeneity is brought about by the difference in their material components, material equipments. Your body is different, my body is different. Your mind is different, my mind is different. Your intellect is different, my intellect is different. That's all the differences. So all the bodies, minds and intellects, they change. They are never be the same of everybody. The one self in different equipments manifests as a different beings. So Atman in the tiger is different from Atman in a cow. Cow has got the same God The tiger has the same God, but the tiger is ferocious, destructive, whereas the cow is soft, meek, and mild. The opposite natures, but that is because of the matter equipments, material layers. The one self in different equipments manifests as different beings. So, to understand this concept, we just have to see the different bulbs, different electrical equipments connected by the same electricity. Electricity is the same in all electrical equipments, different expressions will be there. The heater expresses the electricity expressed as a heat. The cooler, the electricity expresses through cooler produces coolness. But the electricity is neither hot nor cold. It is brought about by the equipment, the gadget, the heater or the cooler. Nothing to do with electricity. Same way, the terrorist or the saint is brought about by their minds, their intellects, and their bodies, not the Atman. Atman is considered as neutral entity. Even the opposite natures like heat and cold, everything because of the material equipment. So, what is the common man's focus of attention? The constant focus of attention for a general human being is ever upon physical body or mind or intellect. So your attention, your interest, your focus is remained all the time on the body, on the mind, on the intellect, never on the self. Therefore, you are all the time agitated. You are constantly in the perceptions, actions. Your focus, if you are on the body, you are carried away by the perceptions and actions. If your focus is on the mind, you have various emotions. And your focus is on the intellect, you are carried away by the thoughts and ideas of the intellect. So, thereby you experience the variety, heterogeneity, plurality, diversity, where different. The more you experience differences, it indicates that the more you are far removed from the Supreme Self, from the Atman. The more you close to the self, the differences, diversity melts into unity, melts into oneness, melts into commonality, totality. But the people at this moment experiencing variety, plurality, heterogeneity of the world, that is the problem that causes the friction and frustration. The more you feel different, alag, the more friction, frustration, the more sorrow and suffering. The more you collectively become one with others, the differences reduce, you develop peace and happiness. This is a law. Nobody can change it. People become adversaries, people become enemies to combat with, because your mind remains in these differences, gets agitated, disturbed. So, the more you are caught up in the world, the more your attention is on the world, the more your interest in the world, the more you concentrate on the world of bodies, minds, intellect, sensuality, materiality, and emotionality and intellectuality, you experience friction, frustration, agitation, disturbance, depression, suffering, and sorrow. It leads to destruction also finally. Therefore, what is to be done? Step up your interest, your identification, your focus from the matter equipment to the self within, to the God within, to the Atman. You have to think about the Atman. You have to remember the God all the time, to pluck yourself from the matter equipments to the self within. That is the clue for the generating harmony, generating peace, generating happiness. You create your own happiness by shifting your attention, your concentration, your focus from the matter to the self within. There is no other shortcut. So, to find harmony, therefore, you shift your focus of attention to the self, to the Atman, the same in you, same in me, same in everybody. That same principle, same essence, same core, same nucleus, the Atman, the God principle is same. You have to think about that. The moment you shift and to the Atman, you gain that harmony, peace, because the self is the supreme state of peace and bliss. The Atman is your original nature, that is the state of Akhandananda, Brahmananda, Atmananda, Nityananda, constant happiness, perennial of joy. That you will experience only when you are contacted with the self, means thinking about the self. That is the spiritual core of all living beings. That is the essence of every living being. You will recognize a homogeneity everywhere. The moment you contact the self, when you focus on the self, you experience a homogeneity, a universality, a oneness instead of diversity everywhere. Then only your mind turns peaceful and happy. Everyone is constantly chasing happiness, searching happiness, looking for happiness, but everybody is going and searching in the wrong direction. The direction is gone completely off track to the external world of objects and beings, experience of the perceptions and emotions and thoughts. Those cannot give you happiness because they don't have it. They don't contain it. The content of happiness is within the self, within the Atman. The same example we thoroughly studied in the previous class also. You have got a choice in this world. Like an example is a great kingdom was there. The kingdom has a beautiful palace. In the palace, there is a beautiful mirror house. I'm just trying to recapitulate how much is important this concept of focus of our attention to gain peace and bliss. The palace has a beautiful house, mirror house. In that mirror house, the every side of the room is fixed with mirrors, where the up ceiling, down floor, side, right side, left side, front, back, all directions there is a mirrors and mirrors, bedecked with mirrors. That mirrors room is a unique for which the king used to come and decorate himself before going to the public presentation. That mirror house suddenly was got into that. One dog saw the mirror house and escaped from the palace and entered into the mirror house by mistake, and it suddenly experienced a different dog in front of its presence. It saw the mirror, there is another dog. The dog got very much, because the animals are very jealous. So the dog got jealous. How come another dog has came in this palace? So it started panic. It saw the right side. It saw another dog because there is another mirror there. Again it saw left side. It saw another dog. Again it got furious. and it saw above, there is another dog above, because the mirror up also. So in all directions there are mirrors, and it saw every direction there are dogs and dogs. It got so angry, so wild, so jealous, it shouted at them. The moment the dog shouted at the mirrors, the dogs in the mirrors shouted back, because it is just a reflection. But dog doesn't know, so all dogs shouted back. Immediately, dog got panicked. The dog got so much worried that it is not able to control its emotion. It jumped on the dog in the mirror. Thousands of dogs jumped at it. It's the imagination, reflection. Immediately, it got so much agitated, disturbed, so much feared, scared, and then it started going, hitting this wall, this mirror, hitting that mirror, gets cuts everywhere, injured everywhere, gets broken, ultimately by running helter-skelter, knocking here, knocking there, broken itself and simply collapsed in the corner and bleeded to death. Dog died. Then the workers in the palace came and cleaned these remains, and then they made the room ready. The same mirror house, the king entered now, and the king, with full of decoration, full of cheer and full of smile, he came and sat down, and he saw in each mirror there is a beautiful his image. He saw in the front, he decorated, checked himself, he saw his right side, he is very nice, left side, everything is perfect, he is happy, and he left the mirror house. My dear friends, what is the difference between the king and the dog in the mirror palace? The king knows the reflection in the mirror house, all the mirrors, in whichever direction he saw himself. There is no difference for him and the mirror image. He knows that, he understands, he recognizes, he realizes. He has no problem. Whereas the dog in the earlier, before when it entered, it saw different dogs in the mirrors. Every mirror has a different dog. It got caught up in the diversity, heterogeneity, variety. Therefore, it got panicked, scared, and it got collapsed, injured, and dead. So, now come back to our life, friends. Every human being enters into this world, and unfortunately, they enter into this world with the attitude of how the dog entered, and they suffer fully. They see the differences, diversities, varieties, pluralities, heterogeneity, and got caught up in this variety of exhibitionism of plurality, and gets agitated, suffer depression, divorces, distraction, all sorts of sufferings they experience, because their nature is, focus of attention is on the variety, on the diversity, on the heterogeneity. Whereas human being is provided with this great opportunity of focus of attention, of freedom of choice. You have a choice of action to shift your attention, interest from the diversity to the common factor, changeless entity, the Atman, the God within. That if you are able to x-ray through each different beings and fix your interest on the self, instantly you experience peace and bliss, happiness. Just as a king, you see everywhere, you have that peace of mind, smile in your face, no change at all. You experience the joy of life. That is the consummation. That is the beautiful episode you must remember all the time. That is the great lesson. A human being alone in ignorance sees the variety and diversity. The moment you recognize the Atman, the spirit, the common factor in every being, every living being, you generate peace and happiness. In the past, the story, it goes like this. In the past, palaces in India had rooms with mirrors all over their inner walls. The decorated king wasn't want to look at himself before his appearance to public. He would view his reflections to ensure that his decoration was proper. Once the palace dog entered the mirror room, see how a human being is able to enter. Every human being enters into this world with ignorance. It is worse than dog actually. At least dog got very instinctive because no intellect, no choice of action, no freedom. It has got a instinct, so it dies. But human being got this great capacity of intellect to analyze, to think, to penetrate, to reason, to question, to go to the common factor. But alas, he lives below the human dignity and suffer. That's what the great example. The dog entered in the mirror room, saw many dogs all around, bewildered and terrified. It barked at them, scampered about, pounced on them. So did these dogs. Thus, jumping, barking, and biting, the poor animal collapsed on the floor. This has been the sad plight of human beings. Why are you finding differences and diverses and separation and varieties? Because of lack of fundamental knowledge of inner self. The moment there is no rich and poor, there is no good and bad, there is no right and wrong, everything is one and the same if you connect with the Atman, the God principle. There is no caste, there is no religion, there is no variety at all. If you are able to gain that jnana chakshu, eye of wisdom, gaining the knowledge of the self, you see the self everywhere. The differences you overlook, you definitely experience them. You have the body, you have the mind, you have the intellect, you experience heat and cold, you experience joy and sorrow, you experience honor and dishonor. Everything is there, but you are not having any more interest or attention because you understood the reality of the life. The reality is the common factor which is activating these equipments to function, which is the Atman, the Brahman. That is lacking. So in ignorance, you see the beings of the world as different, opposite to you. You develop animosity, bitterness, hatred towards the world because of differences. Focus of attention is on the differences and suffer mental stress and strain. There is no stress, no strain for a human being who fixed his attention on the self. If his interest and attention drops from the Atman to the matter layers, you experience stress and strain. You experience worry and anxiety. You must therefore, what to do? Learn to recognize your own self reflected everywhere. The same self, the Atman. You are the self using your body. You are the self using your mind. You are the self using your intellect to contact this world of varieties. But the self in you, self in everywhere, you have experienced same, then you have no problem at all. As the king saw himself in all his reflections, the self that enlivens your material equipments is the same that enlivens all other living beings. So there is no other common factor except the self, which is every equipment is functioning. Like every electrical equipment is functioning because of electricity. Whether it is a fridge whether it is a cooler, whether it's a heater, whether it is a bulb, whether it is a fan, it doesn't matter what equipment it is, but the same electricity functions. Similarly, same God principle functions in the intelligent, brilliant, or a dull person. Is where a rich person or a poor person, it doesn't matter. Your focus should be on the self and self alone. Thus, you develop an attitude of friendship. You become friendly, you become nice, you become cool, you become easy. Your relationships become better and better because of attention is on the self, not on the differences. And that leads to a harmony and love towards all living beings, to the world at large. You radiate love and affection to every living being if you are able to see through, x-ray through every equipment and get to the self within. A feeling of oneness with all beings, that is the quality of a devotee. A devotee of God has got a beautiful quality. What is that quality? Advesta sarva bhutanam. No hatred to any being. Every being he is able to identify the self within, the God within. That is the beautiful feeling. You get it if you recognize the self in every living being. Just as another example also, the sunlight. The sun above, which is giving light, is only one, all pervading light. The sun above is all light. But on earth, people experience day and night. Sun has no day and night differences. Sun is, if you go and ask the sun, do you know last night what happened? Sun will not accept because sun has no night darkness. It is total light. But on the earth, people experience day and night. Why? Because it is rotating. Likewise, the Atman, the Supreme Self, is all blissful. So Atman has no sorrow and suffering. The God principle, the self has no sorrow and misery. But we bring out sorrow and misery because of ignorance, darkness. Yet you go through the cycle of joy and sorrow, ups and downs, fluctuations. The source of these diverse experience is the source of all these experiences is your own supreme self. The self, the Atman, is the true source, origin. The matter equipments is the outer layers. So the source of all these experiences, your body has heat and cold, your mind has joy and sorrow, but how they are experiencing? Because of the help of the source of the self. Inner self is the source of all these experiences. You have lost the sight of yourself. We have lost the self and caught up in this material equipments. Your attention and interest is ever upon the world of changes. Therefore, you are experiencing changes. Sometimes you are happy, sometimes you are sorrowful, sometimes you are healthy, sometimes you are sick, sometimes you are brilliant, sometimes you are dull. This day and night, all these are all earthly experiences, material experiences, nothing to do with the sun above. Sun is all light. Similarly, friends, if you experience the self as the self, there is no problem. Since we have disconnected, we have lost the experience of the self, and we are caught up in the experiences of the earthly, which is day and night, opposites. The worldly experience, the body, heat and cold, joy and sorrow, the mind, honor and dishonor, ignorance and knowledge of the intellect, brilliance and dullness. All these are all going on because we have caught up in this earthly experiences like the day and night. But the self, like the sun above, all light, there is no darkness. Similarly, in the self, there is no disturbance. It is infinite happiness, pure happiness, Sachidananda Swarupa. That is what the understanding. What has to be done? Gain that awareness of the self. Get to the light. Get to the consciousness. Get to the sunlight. That's what we pray all the time. Om Bhur Bhuvaswaha Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahe Dhyo Yona Prachodaya. The sun god we constantly worship is the visible manifestation of Supreme Self. That's why this Gayatri mantra has been chanted, because to remind ourselves that we should not be carried away by these earthly experiences and shift our interest on the sun. On the sun means on the all-pervading light, all consciousness, so that we step up our intellect. Dhiyo yona prachodaya. Dhi means buddhi. Our intellect should be used to connect with the sunlight, connect with the Atman, where the mind is going towards the desires of the world of varieties. So you have to pluck the mind by the powerful intellect to shift your attention interest from the world to the self within. That is the practice we must constantly engage ourselves, is the guidance given by this example. Your attention, interest, you experience the day of pleasure and the night of pain. Every human being, you cannot find one person constantly be happy. Pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, constantly tossed by, tormented by, sandwiched by these pairs of opposites. You must regain your identity of the self. No longer these ups and downs, fluctuations. Get to the core of changeless entity from this changing phenomena. Your unity with the God. You have to connect with the Atman, unity with the God, the supreme reality. Utilize these equipments. You are not asked to drop overnight and leave them and discard them. You can't commit suicide. You have to use your physical body. You have to use your mind. You have to use your intellect for the sake of reaching the Supreme Self. Not just indulgence in the equipments. Get disconnected from the self. That is not the purpose of these equipments. What is the equipment's purpose is, utilize your equipments and the world outside to transcend them. Use them to go beyond them. Use the body for service and sacrifice. Help ever, hurt never, said O Mahatma. Help ever, hurt never. The body is given to you to engage itself for service and sacrifice, not sensual indulgence. But people use it as sensuality and indulgences. This is destroying their peace of mind. So use the body. Sarira madhyam kalu dharma sadhanam. Dharma sadhanam. They used all these great words to use this body for selfless action. Serve and serve and serve. The greatest life is, whose life is in continuous sacrifice. Sacrifice means this attitude of service and sacrifice. Not to give away your things, but engage yourself into service to the others for gaining the knowledge of the self. So use the equipments and the world to transcend them all and reach your original being, your true being of the Supreme Self, the abode of absolute peace and bliss, the dwelling place, the real state of being, the real dwelling place, the residence, the location of Atman. You have to reach it in this lifetime. That must be your goal. If you are a human being, you must fix that goal first, so that at least you try to push yourself towards that goal. The goal itself is not understood. You are not having any possibility. You will not be having any possibility to push yourself towards that goal. So the goal is to reach yourself is the human birth, purpose and mission. So the abode of absolute peace and bliss, into that state of being, all physical pleasures, all emotional joys, all intellectual raptures dissolve. So any amount of pleasure of the physical body, any amount of joy in the mind, any amount of knowledge or rational satisfaction, intellectual satisfaction will not compensate with the Supreme Self. All the rivers only aiming at merging into the ocean. All these equipments only provided you to dissolve yourself into the Supreme God, the Atman. There lies your real contentment, real satisfaction, real completeness, paripurna, all fullness, wholeness you achieve only then. That is the Supreme Self, the reality. That is the culmination of human life. That is the ultimate ending. That is the ultimate destination, final goal. There is nothing more to achieve. Once you reach the self, there is nothing to reach. That is why it is called culmination. Culmination means total completion of human life. Until then, these births and deaths and these lives and deaths and jivatma will be repeating itself. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam, yahasamsare, bahudustare, krupaya pare, pahimurare, vajugovindam. He says, repeated birth, repeated death, repeatedly lying in the mother's womb and going through this. Every human life, it is going on, every life after life, until you reach the ultimate state of original being. This will continue because you are not going to be satisfied. You are not going to be fulfilled. You will not be complete until you hit the self. The self is your ultimate goal, whether you accept or reject. This is the truth of life. All the rivers will never stop until they merge with the ocean. No river will say, enough is enough, I will not go now. Every river is searching constantly, relentlessly, traversing, meandering, going. When the valley comes, it jumps. When the obstruction comes, it overtakes. When the boulders come, it pulverizes into pebbles and sand and dust, but it will not stop its pursuit until it reaches the ocean. Same way, friends, human beings, we are, whether you are consciously or unconsciously, you will never be rest content until you reach the self. So you may be temporarily satisfied with the name, fame, power, position, status, money and family. Temporary joys you will get, but the search continues. You will never be happy because the happiness doesn't exist in this world. It exists in the self. That's what this paragraph is talking about. The abode of absolute peace and bliss. You have to utilize this human life, utilize this body, mind, intellect, utilize these diversified experiences to reach the ultimate state of self-realization. That is the consummation, culmination of human life. People the world over do not realize their real worth. Today, every human being is sold off for pittance, for pebbles, for copper coin. You sell yourself for this world and for small happiness the world provides. You lose your real worth. The absolute state of being that lies within them, they are not able to recognize what is their value and worth. A human being is the king of life, a master of the world. The highest position has been given to a human being, but not able to realize the human being's worth. The infinite happiness of the self, he does not have any idea. They have discarded the nectar of the divinity within. You ask any human being today, how are you? I am fine. what? As long as things are fine, they discarded the divinity within them and caught up in the external objects and beings of temporary nature. So, they are trying to find peace and happiness in the world rather than finding happiness where it is located. It is located in the Supreme Self, but they are not going towards there. They don't want to search there. They lost their real worth. They don't know, they don't realize that real worth. They are trying to find happiness in the world. All the pleasure and joy derived from the world would not be worth a drop in the ocean of bliss within your own self. So, any amount of riches, any amount of comforts, any amount of physical pleasure or joy, emotional joy or intellectual satisfaction will not be able to give you that infinite happiness of your own self which you already have within you. So, all the pleasure and joy derived from the world can never be of worth of a drop in the ocean. It is all a sand particle, a drop in the ocean, in the bliss of the self within, the Atman, happiness of the Atman, the reality. It is a blunder you commit in courting outward objects and beings. So people chasing the outward objects and beings for their pleasure and joy, they become slaves. You ask anybody, how are you? Fine, sir. Why are you fine? Because my job is going on, I am fine. Because my wife is smiling, I am fine. Because my children are fine, I am fine. Your happiness is depend upon outside factors. Factors outside you. That conditional happiness cannot guarantee the true bliss and happiness, eternal joy within. The moment you realize, the moment you understand the happiness within is infinite nature, you don't give undue importance to these outside objects and beings. You respect them, you relate with them, you understand them, you understand their limitation also. But you will never give undue importance, black market value to the objects and beings of the world because they don't provide long-lasting, eternal happiness is the reality. So what is the blunder is committed by courting outside objects and beings all the time. Human beings are slaves to this body and its pleasures, mind, its emotions, intellect, its joys from the extracting from the outside world, and this great self has been discarded. Judas Iscariot sold Christ for 30 pieces of silver. So a Judas Iscariot sold Christ. Christ represents the self within. Judas Iscariot sold means he discarded the self for 30 pieces of silver. So you are a CEO of a company, you are a owner of a company, but you are like a attendant or a clerk. You are applying a job in that company which you are the owner. It's like that. It's so absurd, so pathetic, so sad. That's what the great masters feel. So have you sold your Christ within? Every human being is sold himself and caught up in this limited, restricted, imprisoned human being of body, mind, intellect and suffering. So have you sold your Christ within for the shadows of pleasure and joy in the world? It is just shadows, not even real. The shadows, you are getting carried away. Whatever the pleasure anybody experiencing, it is not real pleasure. It is a shadow of the self. Example, to understand this, it's easy. You buy an ice cream, you eat an ice cream, you contact the ice cream, you taste the ice cream, you say, I am enjoying a beautiful pleasure, enjoying the ice cream, nice taste. But what is the taste? Is the taste, the enjoyment is in the ice cream? You claim to be so, it is in the ice cream. No. The pleasure is within the self. It is a shadow of the self. Because if the ice cream has the pleasure content inside the ice cream, whoever contacts the ice cream should have equal pleasure. But some people hates the ice cream. Some people hates the objects. Some people enjoy the object. Some people get pain from that object. Object is the same. One person gets pleasure, another person gets pain. That indicates there is no pleasure content inherently in the object or being. It is within yourself. It is a shadow. It is just a shadow of the joy of the self. That's what it means by the shadow's pleasure or joy in the world. You ought not to be. You have to be wiser than that. You ought to be wiser than that. You should not be carried away by the shadows of the worldly pleasures. Your own self has it all. Your own Atman has the infinite happiness, infinite pleasure, infinite joy. Therefore, there you seek. Everything is there. You have to tap there. The source is there. Seek within. In the Vedic text, Upanishad, the Guru deplores this grave blunder of humanity. He cries out, he who does not realize the self here in this lifetime suffers immeasurable loss. It's a very, very sad thing, the Upanishad. In the Upanishad, the mantra says, Ihacheta Vedi Data Satyamasti, Nacheti Ha Vedi Mahati Vinasti, Bhuteshu Bhuteshu Vichitya Dhiraha Pretyasman Lokan Amrta Bhavanti. What he says is, if you don't understand the source of infinite happiness in this very lifetime, if you don't put effort, seek the infinite happiness here and now, you have done, if you are going to lose immeasurable loss. If you search the self, you have done your duty as a human being. If you get back to your original self, if you get to your source, your Atman, you find yourself within this lifetime, you have done your dharma, you have done your duty as a human being. If you neglect this, if you discard this, if you reject this and go to the world, Mahati Vinastihi, Ihacheta Vedi Dhata Satyamasti. If you find the self in this life, in this world, Satyamasti, you lived a truthful life, you lived a fulfilled life, you lived a complete life, you lived a life, real life, a human life. Because human beings born to find the self. Normal life. It is not extraordinary. It is the natural thing. You must find. A river has to find the ocean. You have to find the self. That is the Satyamasti. Nacheti ha vedin. If you don't find the self in this lifetime, if you don't choose to find it, Mahati vinastihi. Nastam means loss. Vinasti means supreme loss. Superlative. Mahati vinastihi. Supreme most of supreme losses. Means it is double superlative. Language breaks down. It is a grammatical blunder. You can't use too many superlatives. Mahati vinastihi means it is immeasurable loss, unfathomable loss. The loss is inconceivable. Therefore, my friends, it is our bounden duty and obligation that you must fix your interest and attention to find the self in this lifetime, in and through your activities, your obligatory duties, in and through your day-to-day chores of life, in and through your responsibilities. No doubt you go through every responsibility, but with that acute awareness that I must get back to my supreme self. I don't want to waste my life in this quagmire of this world of perceptions, actions, emotions, and thoughts, this hollowness, emptiness. This world has no pith or substance. It is just a mechanical routine, herd instinct. So why should I caught up? This must be the right attitude you must have. The great Upanishad cries out to entire humanity. The Guru deplores in the Upanishad the grave blunder of humanity. He who does not realize the self here in this lifetime suffers immeasurable loss. So, what has to be done? Plan your activities. Get up in the morning at 4 and study this knowledge. Fill yourself with the divinity and then go to the duties and responsibilities. Your divinity will take care of everything because you will be happy and you will be functioning with that self as a background, and your pursuit is crystal clear. Your intellect is fixed on the self, your mind surrenders to the self, your body is acting. You will be invigorating, exhilarating, experiencing. So, this is the paragraph. We will continue the rest of the paragraph in the next class. Thank you very much. Hari Om.